I used to think the way my eyes looked was just something I had to accept, a quirk, a flaw, something people would notice and then try to pretend they didn't. I remember standing in front of mirrors as a teenager, tilting my head slightly to one side, wondering if a different angle made it less obvious. It didn't. And no matter how much I told myself it was just cosmetic, just a surface-level thing that didn't really affect my life, the truth was quietly piling up in ways I wasn't ready to admit yet. The exhaustion after reading for 20 minutes. The way I'd lose my place on a line of text and have to start over, again and again. The headaches that seemed to come from nowhere but always arrived after long hours of screen time or concentration. I blamed stress. I blamed bad lighting. I blamed everything except what was actually happening inside my visual system, because nobody had ever sat me down and explained that strabismus, the condition where your eyes don't point in the same direction at the same time, isn't just about how you look. It's about how your brain and your eyes are communicating, or, more accurately, how they're failing to. That shift in understanding changed everything for me, and I want to share it with you, because I suspect that if you're here, you already know the weight of what I'm describing. Maybe you felt it too, the instinct to avoid direct eye contact because you're not sure which eye the other person is looking at. The social anxiety that builds quietly in professional settings, on first dates, in job interviews. The exhausting performance of trying to appear confident when part of your mind is always somewhere else, always monitoring, always aware of how you must look to someone standing 3 feet away from you. What I didn't know, what most people don't know, is that those internal experiences, the fatigue, the visual discomfort, the difficulty focusing, are not just emotional side effects. They are symptoms. They are the nervous system telling you, in the only language it has, that something in the coordination between your eyes and your brain is out of balance. I came across the work of Dr. Ethan Walker, an ophthalmologist and visual neuroscience researcher who has spent years studying the relationship between eye muscle function and neurological coordination. The way he explains it is both simple and deeply clarifying. He describes the eyes not as independent organs, but as extensions of the brain, 2 outposts of a central processing system that needs both of them to agree, constantly, on where to look and how to focus. When that agreement breaks down, the brain has to make a choice. It can try to fuse the 2 conflicting images, which leads to strain and headaches. Or it can suppress one image entirely, which is the brain's way of protecting itself from confusion, but which, over time, can contribute to the very misalignment we're trying to understand. This is where the conversation about strabismus needs to begin, not with surgery brochures or cosmetic consultations, but with this foundational question: why are the eyes disagreeing in the first place? The human eye is controlled by 6 extraocular muscles, each one attached to the outside of the eyeball and responsible for moving it in a specific direction. These muscles are coordinated by signals from 3 different cranial nerves, which in turn are regulated by areas of the brainstem and the cerebellum, regions of the brain that handle balance, timing, and motor coordination. For your eyes to remain aligned, all of these systems have to work together with extraordinary precision, thousands of times per second, adjusting constantly as you shift your gaze, track a moving object, or transition between near and far focus. When any part of that system is slightly off, when one muscle is weaker than its counterpart, when the neural signals are delayed or inconsistent, when the brain's map of where each eye is pointing doesn't match reality, the result can be visible misalignment. That's strabismus, not a cosmetic anomaly, a coordination failure with real neurological roots. For those who want to better understand how to improve vision, reduce visual strain, and discover habits that help protect eye health over time, there is a complete guide linked in the first description below. It expands naturally on everything we are discussing here and goes deeper into the practical steps you can take starting today. Now, here is the part that surprised me most when I first learned it. Strabismus is not always present from birth. And even when it develops early in life, the factors that influence how severe it becomes, whether it stays stable or progresses, and how well the visual system compensates, are often shaped by habits and environments that we actually have some control over. Dr. Walker points to something called vergence dysfunction, the brain's difficulty in coordinating the inward or outward movement of both eyes together when adjusting focus. This is different from simply having weak eye muscles. It's more like a software problem than a hardware one. The muscles may be physically capable of the movement, but the brain's instructions are inconsistent, delayed, or poorly calibrated. This is often what underlies intermittent strabismus, the kind that comes and goes depending on fatigue, stress, or the visual demands of a particular task. Think about what your eyes are being asked to do in a modern environment. Hours of near-point focus on screens and artificial light, often with minimal blinking, minimal breaks, and minimal distance variation. The visual system evolved over millions of years for a world that required constant scanning of a wide, naturally lit environment. It was not designed for 8 hours of fixed-distance screen work. When we force it into that pattern day after day, the strain accumulates in the very muscles and neural pathways responsible for keeping our eyes aligned. This doesn't mean that screens cause strabismus in a simple, direct way. The relationship is more nuanced than that. But for someone who already has a vulnerability in their vergent system, a slight imbalance in muscle strength, a subtle delay in neural coordination, the cumulative effect of sustained near work without adequate rest can be enough to tip the balance. What was manageable becomes visible. What was occasional becomes chronic. There's also a component that almost nobody talks about, which is the emotional and psychological feedback loop that strabismus creates. When someone is anxious, the muscles of the face and eyes tighten. Stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, which affects muscle tone throughout the body, including the tiny, precise muscles around the eyes. For someone with an existing tendency toward misalignment, anxiety and chronic stress can make the condition visibly worse, which creates more anxiety, which creates more tension, which worsens the alignment. It's a cycle that can feel completely out of your control because you're not aware that it's happening. Understanding this loop doesn't solve it instantly, but it does something important. It shifts the frame from "this is just how my eyes are" to "there are factors here that influence what's happening, and some of them are within my reach." That shift matters more than people realize, because it opens the door to genuine engagement with the problem rather than passive resignation to it. If you want to learn practical ways to maintain good vision, reduce unnecessary strain, and discover which vitamins and habits help support your eye health over time, there is a simple guide linked in the first description below that brings all of this together in a clear and actionable way. What I want you to take from everything we've explored today is this: strabismus is not a cosmetic issue wearing the disguise of a medical one. It is a real, complex coordination challenge involving the brain, the nervous system, and the muscular architecture of the eye. The fact that it's visible on the outside doesn't make it superficial. If anything, the visibility is just the surface expression of something that goes much deeper, something that deserves real attention, real understanding, and real compassion, especially from ourselves. Every person who has ever felt self-conscious about the way their eyes look in a photograph, or avoided eye contact to prevent confusion, or quietly wondered if others were judging them, every one of those people deserves to know what's actually happening in their visual system. Not so they can feel more burdened by it, but so they can stop carrying the additional weight of not knowing. Because here's what I've come to believe after going through this journey myself. The moment you understand a problem, really understand it, from the inside out, it stops having quite so much power over you. You're no longer just reacting to symptoms. You're responding to causes. And that difference between reacting and responding is where real change begins. If this story resonated with you, if it gave you something to think about, or helped you feel a little less alone in what you've been experiencing, please consider subscribing to this channel. We're building something here that goes beyond surface-level information, a space where real questions get real answers, where health is explored with honesty and depth, and where every video is a continuation of a conversation worth having. Subscribe, stay with us, and let's keep learning together.